You know what they fill those jelly-filled donuts in Boston? They fill them with blood, because tonight we're going to be talking about Boston by Night, the tie-in source book for Vampire the Masquerade Swansong, which you can use in your Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition games. It's a source book full of all sorts of material from the game and the themes and characters relating to the game.
That's right, Boston by Night. This is a PDF that came with Vampire the Masquerade Swansong, an Epic exclusive game, so you might not have heard of it because Vampire had this big sale on Steam a couple weeks ago, and Swansong was not on there. So I know a lot of people just assumed what's on Steam is what there is, but this game came out a couple weeks ago, almost a month ago now, and we're still getting through it, but we can talk about the PDF and the world that they've created, because I think it's actually really good. I think it's one of the better things from V5 that's come out, the game and the source book together. Let's talk about the positives we have about the book before I get into my nitpick.
Just as a bit of a preamble to build context, I really enjoyed the computer game. I guess the video game.
Yeah, computer game. That's like an old person thing to say.
I've really enjoyed the computer program. It's great. No, I've really enjoyed the video game, like Swansong. The source book here, I feel it does expand on it, and it does have a lot of gameable material. There's an entire section on the backstory that delves into different story hooks that you don't see in in Swansong itself, but you can certainly pull into your own games.
I mean, that's why you're buying a book, or that's why you're getting the book, right? Because it's not just the stuff that's in the game. This is stuff that if you're trying to make your own story, you're going to need. You're going to need to know about the backstory that you can then... Let's say everybody at the table has played Swansong. Stuff like Quentin King and his history, that's not going to be really revealed to you in the game. So you can surprise your players with it.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, it does add in these different factions that don't necessarily come up in the game. Like, it tells about how you have this war between the British Camarilla, the Sabbat that was in the area, and then somehow the Giovanni were involved back when they were still called the Giovanni.
You just said Camarilla. And
sorry. The correct pronunciation now is not Camarilla. The game corrects us plebeians. It's Camarilla.
Everybody says Camarilla in the game, and I messaged you about it, and you said, "Oh, actually, that's how it's supposed to be said. It comes from Italian."
You're correct. No, it's not Italian. It's not Italian. I looked it up. Camarilla comes from Spanish. Actually, I thought it was Italian. I looked it up. It's Spanish. A camarilla.
A small meeting room.
Yeah, literally translates as a small meeting room.
I just read the part in Requiem like last week where they specifically say that. So you were wrong. I was wrong. We're the brainlets here.
Yes, it's specifically a term used in Spain to describe a conspiracy of some kind. So the idea of this small room is like you have people meeting in this small room who are planning something, which describes what the Camarilla is in the game anyway. I just did it. You're right. It's muscle memory, and I'm a brainlet. I'm a smooth brain.
So the first part with the backstory is really interesting because I think I really like the Quentin King stuff. In the game, it's kind of vague about what he did. You see some characters that are related to him do stuff and some flashback. It's all really vague. But actually hearing about Quentin King or actually reading about Quentin King in the book, he's a lot more interesting than I initially thought. Like his whole Arthurian bent, his questing knights.
I heard you really like his knights. You're telling me how they inspire you.
Oh yeah, I said they were based.
Of course.
I said they were based. So, yeah, I thought that was some really great stuff. You know what's actually interesting is that the game has this huge codex. So before I was playing the game before I bought the PDF, and I was like, I really don't want to buy any DLC. I'll just play the base game first. And the game has this huge codex full of stuff. and it's actually different from what you get in the PDF. They didn't just like copy paste the codexes between them, and the game by itself is has a lot of gameable material and inspiration. You can play the game and get inspired to run a tabletop, but the PDF, Boston by Night, is not that. It's its own thing, which I really actually appreciate a lot.
Yeah, it does. What its strength is where it stands alone from the game. It's based on the game. It's derived from the game, but it stands alone to a certain extent. Another thing I enjoyed, although I wish it was, I'll get to my gripes later, but one of the things I enjoyed was the relationship maps of the different factions. If any of you have read Chicago by Night, you'll remember how much of the book is dedicated to these mapping out these large coteries and factions within the city, and how all the different members of those coteries relate to each other, and it actually stats them out. In Boston by Night, you have a similar thing where you have various factions such as the Hartford Chantry or the New Haven Camarilla mapped out, and you see how all the different major characters relate to each other. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the characters statted out, but I'll get more into that later on.
You want to talk about the
Overall,
complaints?
well, do you have any other positives you want to talk about?
We're like right into the negatives then. Yeah, I
So you're
like it.
out of positives. You're out of positives.
Before we get into the negatives, I want to say I generally like it. Generally I like it. Well, let me get that out of the way. I'm not gonna just shit on the book, but one of the reasons I like it so much is that it's $5. And if it wasn't $5, my complaints would be way harsher, but they are there. And I just want to say, like, you got to keep that in mind. This is a $5 book. This is 90 pages. This is a supplement to a video game. It's not a 500-page book like the Chicago by Night book is. You can't judge it on those merits or on that same level. So generally, I do like it, even though I do have complaints.
I can agree to all of these actually. For a $5 book, it's fantastic.
Oh, the art. Let me talk about the art because this will segue us into the negatives. But the art is great. I really like how much color there is, how much style. I like how you're reading files, and the text is put on there. That's cool and all, but the art is good. But
But
there's so much. Okay, for example, I tweeted this out. Let me pull up my tweet. I'm skimming through Boston by Night right now, and on the surface, it has some of the same problems I've had with previous VTM5 books. 2 lore sheets and nothing for anarchs? The art is pretty, but a lore sheet should be a sheet, not 4 pages spread out to pad the page count. What the hell
I
is up with
agree.
that?
I agree. I when I saw the lore sheets, I was a little weirded out by that. Like the Camarilla one is like 4 different pages. I had trouble reading it because I'm reading it as a PDF, right?
Yes, and
It's
here's the
supposed to be
thing.
a spread.
I just looked it up too to see if there was a physical copy because this would make sense in a physical copy. Because let's say on one page it's like this 1.2.5 dots, and on the other page it's 3 and 4 dots. But it's laid out that if you were read it as a two page spread, it would make sense. But if you put your PDF to 2 page mode, because of how the 2 pages are, they're not even side by side. It's like on the 2 page
Oh,
mode, the beginning of the Camarilla lore sheet is on the right hand side, and then you have to skip to the second page to the left hand side of the other half of the lore sheet. So they don't even fit.
see, I can tell you what happened there. I can tell you what happened there. You had somebody laying this out, probably in InDesign, thinking that, oh yeah, this is just gonna be a spread like this. I'll lay it out here, lay that out there. I've just taken up 2 pages. I think it looks cool. And then someone goes ahead and adds in like a cover or something, which completely messes up the alignment, completely
Right.
messes it up. That being said, before I get into my gripes, I do want to say this is a minor mistake compared to 99% of all the different typos and misprints and mislabeled text in the original prints of the editions, right? For example, I have an early version of the Anarch book where you have like an entire lore sheet that has an entire section that needs to be cut out. You have all these different rule headings that have the wrong heading font, or text just gets cut off suddenly and then gets picked up later on. All that in the initial printing did get fixed, but in the initial printing, which had like tons of different issues, or sorry,
International issues.
Oh yeah, let's
International
not talk about
incidents.
that. Yes. Without getting too much on a tangent here, Boston by Night having the page alignment wrong is a very minor complaint.
It's a minor complaint, but it's compounded on this other stuff, right? Like, it wouldn't be that bad if it weren't for the fact that the lore sheet is spread out over 4 pages. Like,
yes.
Well, it's 2 pages, but one page is blank, and then the other page, it's just like art for the Camarilla logo, and then the other page says the Camarilla, and then you have 2 pages of basically 5 lines of rules. I was so disappointed when I looked at the 90-page PDF, and then I realized, wait a second, this is more like 60 pages. If you put everything, maybe even less than that, if you put everything and lay it out without all the art taking up so much room, it's not that big.
No, not at all.
And it's like, lore sheets are my favorite thing about V5. We've talked about V5 before, and I really kind of disliked a lot of it. And I liked a lot of other stuff, but the things that I really liked were lore sheets, Thin Blood Alchemy, and the removal of soak. And it's like, why are there only 2 lore sheets? There's so many cool factions that they talk about in Boston by Night and in Swansong that would have made for like really great lore sheets. And you just pump them out. They're like 5-dot merits. You just pump them out.
Yeah, I think part of the issue. Although actually no, that doesn't even make sense. I was gonna say, yeah, maybe they had other ones written up, but then maybe they had to cut it out. But then I'm thinking, wait a minute, if they had to cut it out, why the hell did they spread out a lore sheet, which traditionally is printed out as a single sheet?
Yeah, that's what it's called, a sheet.
Yes. Why did they spread it out over 2 sheets per lore sheet? Like that makes no sense to me. I was about to give them an easy out, but it doesn't even make sense.
Oh, do you remember which book it was when they stopped even giving you 5 dots for the lore sheets? They were just like, here's a sample lore sheet, there's only 3 dots, whatever.
I don't even think there is one.
Is there, or am I getting it wrong?
Or maybe getting it wrong.
You know, I think I'm mixing it up with Legacies from Mage the Awakening. Never mind. Never mind then.
You know what you're thinking of? You're thinking of Bloodlines from the 2nd edition of Vampire the Requiem, where they tell you about all these awesome bloodlines, but they don't print any of them.
Yeah, well that's an OPP thing, where they're like, look at all these cool things. And make it up yourself.
For the new edition.
Well, actually, make it up yourself is a VTM5 thing. Character advancement page is half a page, and one of the paragraphs is about the golden rule of just making it up yourself. Probably the worst thing about VTM5 is the fact that they just don't care about like character advancement, the most important thing for an RPG.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, anyway.
No, I agree. I think we can, in a later episode, we can talk about how I've been inspired by Swansong to how to fix that damn rule. But let's not worry about that.
You know, in like VTM5, they don't have an Anarch lore sheet. They have like Theobel or like Karna or something. They have the circulatory system, but they don't have one that just says Anarchs, because that's like it's not fitting for a lore sheet in that context. But in this game, it should have one, because you have the Camarilla lore sheet, which is different from how the Camarilla are depicted generally. This is specifically the Camarilla in Boston. That's why it makes sense as a lore sheet. But there isn't one for the Anarchs. There's one for the Hartford Chantry. But there's other factions that I think deserve to have one. I think Quentin King definitely should have had one, especially after reading about his questing knights. That would have been a great lore sheet to add in.
Yeah, even just Quentin King, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Or, interestingly enough, descended from Quentin King.
Descended from Quentin King. I like how. Remember how I brought this up to you when I was playing the game, and I was going fucking Malks, and
Yes.
I said, why don't they just kick them all out? And then you said, well, there's going to be collective madness or something. And then in the Boston by Night PDF, that's exactly what Prince Iverson does. She kicks out the no Malkavian will have praxis in the city.
Hmm.
So she did exactly what I said that she should. Kick out all these goddamn Malks. Except for Richard, I guess.
Well, that's because he's useful. He's useful.
And
I mean,
he has a faction of his own.
Yes.
The Red Salon.
Sort of. He has his own organization. He has the Red Salon. He works... Spoilers. He works with another Primogen on it. I guess it's not spoilers.
It kind of is well... Yeah, it's not really an important spoiler. Like, when Leisha sees the dude, he's just like, oh, yeah, you're here. Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Either way, he worked with someone else on it. This book does remind me a lot of Chicago by Night because it's a source book that's tied to a specific setting within the overall World of Darkness. In Chicago by Night, you do have a few lore sheets that are tied to specific locations. Like one of them's tied to, one of them's tied to a vampire speakeasy, which is basically what the Red Salon is. And I mean, the precedent is there. If they really wanted to put in the work, they could have had that extra lore sheet. The Red
what
Salon
I did?
worked.
You know what I did? I had 20 minutes before we started, and I put in the work. All right, so the Red Salon lore sheet that I drew up in 20 minutes.
You actually... This is amazing. This is a
just
creative thaumaturgy first.
Well, my point is, like, lore sheets are easy. Like, this isn't balanced or, like, worked out well. Like, I'm not a professional games rule writer, but in 20 minutes, you can pump out a lore sheet. And I'm still waiting for them to just put out a supplement called Lore Sheets and just have 100 pages of lore sheets. And I would buy that in a heartdrop. I was about to say heartbeat, but then I was trying to say blood something, so I was thinking of drops, and the only thing I dropped was the ball. So let's go on to Red Salon. Let's see. First thought: the names on the list. Plus 3 dice to any charisma or manipulation roll in which your Red Salon affiliation would benefit. Very simple 1 dot beat or advantage. Merit, whatever they call them in 5th edition.
Yeah.
2 dots, scouting, able to find specific resonances easier due to Richard's training in psychology. So you get plus dots in discovering resonance. I think circulatory system has something like this. I just took it from that. But I moved the levels around. Number 3 dots. It's all in the files. Get 3 bonus successes to any investigation roll involving people who entered the Red Salon and used its services. So you have the records of the guest book of when people entered the Red Salon. You can use that for leverage. You can use that to, this vampire went in at this time, at the same time as this anarch did. Are they doing a business deal or whatever? That kind of stuff.
And you have access to it.
And you have access to it.
Okay,
yes.
That's good. That's good.
Skimming from the top, this is the 4th dot. You just get Tragex injections, which is the thing that enhances resonance. You can just get some and then use it on whatever person you want. And then the 5th dot, party all night. Start a project, which is a specific VTM5 mechanic, right? The projects. You can start a project to use the Red Salon as a venue or supplier. This makes it easier to lure all the most prominent members of the city in one place, kind of like the event that kickstarted Swansong.
Yes, the party.
The party.
Yes.
So that's 5 dots, 5 things. It took me 20 minutes. The only thing I had to look up was VTM5's rules a little bit. But my point is, this isn't like fantastic or whatever, and I didn't give like any specific mechanics really, but you don't need to, and surely somebody at White Wolf could like be paid to make one of these, just another lore sheet instead of just having 2.
I think that's a pretty neat idea, especially like the advantage that allows you to make use of a project. There is actually one other lore sheet that I know of that does that. It's the well, so, as they're mentioned in Boston by Night, the Milliners from the Hikata clan. They have a lore sheet advantage that lets them start a project based on some grudge they have. So they can have a number of grudge projects going where they plan out revenge against very specific people based on how much composure they have.
Who are the Hakata? It's been a while since I've read VTM5, but the Giovanni are part of them now?
Yeah, the Hikata is the newly reformed clan of death, which includes the Giovanni and all of their bloodlines, but it also has Cappadocians, the Samedi, and a couple of other random people who kind of got thrown in because hey, you guys are death related. Uh, I actually like the Hikata, but one of the big complaints about them by fans of earlier editions is you just took all these death related bloodlines and threw them all together into a new clan.
Oh, they're a clan.
Yes, they're a weird clan though. They're both a clan and a sect of their own. Like they're the only independent clan left in the game. Whereas in earlier editions, you also had the Setites, the Assamites, and the Ravnos as independent clans as well. But they give them a direction. They're not just like, oh, they're a clan that doesn't join anyone. They're a clan that's made up of a bunch of different bloodlines, and they're all united in this vague goal of let's tear down the shroud and unite the worlds of the dead and the living together permanently.
Oh. Oh, yeah, yeah, I vaguely remember this. There's some, like, wraith thing going on, too, isn't there? Or no, wait, ghosts? There's some ghost thing where the Cappadocians are possessing Giovanni or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So let's move on with Boston by Night. That's lore sheets. I made one really quickly. Um, I wish there were more. That's one of my biggest problems with VTM5 in general is there should just be more lore sheets. Um, Quentin King really should have had one. Some like Arthurian thing where he like part of the bonuses is the blood bond with Quentin King and you get like a merit for going on quests or something. That would have been sick.
That'd be cool, like a 3.1 where it's like you are one of his knights errant, and you have some kind of plan that's been embedded into you, or some sort of quest. You get
Notice how I
bonuses.
notice how I didn't make a lore sheet for the Knights of the Round Table because that would have taken actual effort, whereas the Red Salon one I just took from other lore sheets.
But I think that's, to be honest, I think that's the best practice for making your own lore sheets. Is look at all the other ones, take different levels from it that kind of work, and then just reskin them. I mean, it's a bad idea if you're actually working for, say, White Wolf or Onyx Path, and people expect you to come up with new stuff. But if it's something for your own games, why not?
Yeah, why not? That's why we
Yeah,
need somebody who works at White Wolf to make the Knights of the Round Table lore sheet, please.
do it.
Hmm.
Do
Anyway,
it
let's move
now.
on.
Earlier, I mentioned how I had a bit of a problem with the relationship maps. Um, Again, looking back at Chicago by Night, in Chicago by Night, the relationship maps and all the characters who are involved in them do get fully statted out. Each character in a coterie gets their own stats, and that's what makes Chicago by Night such a cool book. Is that you have this entire setting, everyone involved in it is statted out. You know what they're doing, you know what their plots are. You can basically set them up on your table and let them go and see how the players interact with them and blow things up. I like that a lot. I hope there's more by Night books. In Boston by Night, you only get really half of that. You do get the factions, and you do have an idea of how everyone relates to each other in the faction, which is very gameable. I just want to lay out because you know how the characters think about each other, and you can spin off all sorts of different story ideas based off of that. What's missing, though, is that none of these characters are statted out. And not only are they not statted out, you don't know what their ambitions are. You don't know what plots they have going. That's one of the things that Chicago by Night had. In addition to all the stats, characters have different plans or rumors about them, and you could throw them into your game as you saw fit. It would be nice if you could do that in this game. Um, all of this, though, comes with the caveat that this is a 90-page book, and Chicago by Night is like several hundreds of
Is it a
pages.
Is it a 90-page book?
Sorry, it's an 88
Yeah.
give or take page book.
No. Less than that. Okay, I'm on the Hartford Chantry page, right? It's cut off because whoever designed this did not design this for a PDF. Again, because it's page 38, it's on the right hand side, so it says the Hartford Ch, and then on the you gotta go to the next page, scroll down, and then it says entry, and below the headline are basically 4 paragraphs spread out over 2 pages. So is it not? Is it a 90-page book? Is it an 80-page book? Not really. But the reason I bring this up is because this is where the relationship map is. And it says here, notable kindred, Deneb Osborne, Lynn Vance, Maddox Samuels, Graham Fleming, Janice Wakefield, Clyde Moses, Mildred Woods, Everett Green, Upton Rowlands, Jeremy Skelton, several other Ventru and Tremere of Connecticut. Who? Who are these? Who are these people? They have no stats. They're not really explained. They're on the relationship map, and you can kind of infer that Deneb Osborne is Maddox Samuel's sire because it says there's an arrow that says "my boy." Maybe I don't know who these people are. There are no stats, as you said, like in Chicago by Night.
Yeah, I think this is where it has a disadvantage for being a tie-in book, because all those characters are kind of explained in the Codex of the Swansong, so you know who these are, sort of. You know them. You
Yeah,
know who they are
yeah.
a bit more than you do just by reading this
It
book.
doesn't really work if you haven't played Swansong. And to be fair, you have to buy Swan. I actually don't know if you have to buy Swansong to buy this PDF, but it's a DLC for Swansong. So it assumes that you know these people from the game or will encounter them after you've read the book. So maybe if you haven't played Swansong and then you're a dirty pirate and just got this book somewhere, you might not get out of it as much as you should or as you're expected to.
That's true. That's true.
And we did not pirate this. I bought this for 565 Canadian dollars or something like that.
I think it was worth it. Like at that price,
Yeah,
100% worth it.
as I said before we started complaining, is for a $5 book, it's great. Why is page 48 consisting of 3 paragraphs? You know. Ah.
I mean, to be fair, that's also the aesthetic of V5. Is there's a lot of white space.
Yeah. This is unrelated to Swansong, kind of. But remember how a couple weeks ago I talked to you and I said I'm reading Requiem right now, just to reacquaint myself because we may be running a Requiem game soon.
Yeah, we're just trying to work out the kinks on that.
I was rereading it and I was like, this is so like it's like being hit on the head with a sledgehammer. Every other paragraph is sex, drugs, sex, and it's like, you know, a convocation of cock and cunt, kiss of Vitae and Cain, and it's like a bombardment of like of fluff, and yet it's so much more readable because it's all I was like, why is it so much more readable and why is there so much more stuff in here than what VTM5 was able to do? Like VTM5 felt so thin in comparison. You remember what you said to me?
What did I said again? It's all gameable smut.
You said it's gameable smut. It's all like tone and character and like and mood. It's not about like politics and characters and this person did that. It's all about like this is how it's all about trying to get you in the mood of being a vampire. What is it like to be a gangrel? What is it like to be a Nosferatu? You spit blood in the eye of your enemies and bond them that way. You know, it's all about getting you in the mindset, whereas this is all about the politics and all about everybody's like OC characters. And
that is so yes, that's true. I do remember this conversation we had. One of the big strengths of Chronicles of Darkness is that they have at the beginning of every single book, not just the core books, but every single supplement, they outright state this is the theme and this is the mood of this book, and they stick to it like flies on a poop.
Yeah, and Requiem Second Edition, it never stops. It really did feel like I was getting sledgehammered in a good way.
That's Rose Bailey for you, though.
That highlights the difference between the writing style between Requiem and VTM5, and kind of what I don't like about VTM5 in general is that it's filled with all this stuff, lore. It's all about meta plot, and all this setting stuff, and it's all, you know, there's so many pages in Boston by Night going about the specific history and all these factions, and it's like reading a story, like a documentary of what happened in the 100 years preceding the game, and it's not so much about like rules and how to play your character and what to do in these situations. Where like at first when I read Requiem, I was thinking, what the hell is this? And yet I was on board with it, and I actually absorbed a lot of it. Whereas this, I'm just like, yeah, and then the Patriots, the don't tread on me. I like how
Patriots.
I like how they have the NAP, where it's like,
Yes.
we have rules. We don't enforce them. Just don't break the NAP. Do not aggress on another vampire. But it's like you have such a limited amount of text in the book, and so much of that text is dedicated to these NPCs. And what they did, not necessarily like, not even like their character stats. It's just like they did this, and then they did that, and then 20 years later they did this. And maybe it's a personal preference thing, but I don't like it nearly as much.
I kind of agree. I think one of the big issues with Masquerade versus Requiem is this whole idea of lore, and we've had conversations before about lore people. No offense to lore people. I just want to state this. I just want to state this outright. I have nothing against lore people. There's a lot of lore people who are fans of Masquerade for good reason. I would say that most of the channels and podcasts and so on that aren't actual plays are going to be lore related, right?
And let me just say, the reason I laughed was not lore channels related to Masquerade, but lore channels related to other franchises,
Namely World of Warcraft.
namely Final Fantasy. But yes, World of Warcraft
Yes,
and that
that too.
crossover. But anyway, go
I mean,
on.
yeah, they're good people. Matthew Dawkins started off that way, and now he's a
Matthew
creator,
Dawkins
so.
wrote this book. Did you know that?
You know what? I believe that, and here I'm going to say some nice things about Matthew Dawkins. Have you
I
ever
think he's the
heard?
sole author too. So I almost can't be too hard because, you know, he wrote this book by himself. It's not like what Chicago by Night has like 5 different writers or something.
A bunch of different writers. All of them working on different chapters.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ever listened to one of his or one of the Onyx Path podcasts where Dawkins talks about his writing style and his editorial style, it basically boils down to one thing. If you're writing something, every paragraph you write for a game, you have to look at that paragraph and say, okay, where's the story hook in here? That's how he writes. When he's writing these game books, he wants to think, okay, every little tidbit of lore here has to have a possible story hook in it. And putting that much gameable content into your writing, into your lore, and also making it all make sense instead of being this jumble of different things, that takes a lot of skill, a lot of editorial skill. My job is actually to be an editor, so I can appreciate the difficulty that goes into making an entire document make sense like that, while still being full of the quality content that you want. So yes, that's me filleting Matthew Dawkins. Uh, but the difference between Requiem and Masquerade, going back to my original subject, is Masquerade is full of all this different lore and all these different moving parts which make up this overall narrative, whereas Requiem is all about the theme and mood of the game. It's not about trying to tell you how you can fit your campaign into the vast intricacies of the game world. No, it's all about telling you how to play the game, how to run the game, how to make it feel like the game. And that's amazing. There's a definite difference. Whereas Masquerade, you're thinking of all these different plots and all these. Oh, how does this fit into Gehenna somehow? And oh, how have these Primogen been going against each other for a century already? And in Requiem, you don't have all these crazy settings and everything. What you do have is a toolbox built up of themes, of moods, and archetypes you can fill your characters in with.
It's like
Um,
it's like the difference between giving you the tools to create your own world, where it as opposed to here's our world, now you play in it. Which oddly enough, it's more like it's kind of like more fitting for a video game. You know, like here's this world that we create. Here are all the factions. Here are all the plot lines. Now you're being put into our world of darkness, the one world of darkness. Whereas Requiem, it's all about like this is what it's like to be a vampire. This is what it's like. This is the mood. This is you are a monster. You are a sex fiend. You are a pest. Um, and now use that, get into that mindset, and use that to create the world around you.
Yeah, the difference can really be summed up as reading a history book and reading a travel guide, if that makes any sense. Masquerade is like a history book because it tells you all this very rich history and how everything has unfolded and flowed through time, and you have to kind of find your place in it. Whereas Requiem is more of like a travel guide. It tells you, okay, these are the sites. These are the things you can do out here. Oh, what's the history behind it? Well, fill it in yourself. Um, but here's how you can fill it in and make it feel real, right? Here's how you can make it your own. It's not just here's how you can make our thing your own. It's more like here's how you can grow your own story with the seeds we've given you.
Now, I want to say this. I think it's personal preference because there are definitely people who love the way that Metaplot works and stuff like that, and they prefer it that way. Um, it's like a personal preference thing. I'm not saying like one's necessarily better than the other. It depends on you and your group. It's just while reading Boston by Night and then going back and reading Requiem, second edition, it did feel like such a huge gulf in style that I thought it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, yeah, and just again to clarify, like I'm a person who loves history in real life anyway. I do like all these stories of how things unfold over time, and honestly, I run both games, right? I run fifth edition. Sorry, I run V5. I don't run D&D fifth edition. Don't confuse the two. Uh, I run Masquerade fifth edition and I run Requiem second edition. I like both, and I really like the themes for both. I like them for different reasons, but I still like them.
uh, yeah, because it kind of like sounded like I was saying that Requiem is like inherently better than Masquerade. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. I'm saying that Requiem is better than V5. That's there's a big difference. I just don't like
Yeah,
V5. I don't like how much white space there is and how much blading there is for Dracula's OC and not in half a page of gameable material for learning how to advance your character. But that's a topic for another day. Boston by Night is good because it's all this stuff condensed into a small package, and it makes me less angry because it's a 90-page book filled with gorgeous art and colors and is a tie-in to this video game. It alleviates all those problems that I would have had if this was an Anarch book or whatever, like or the Anarch or Camarilla book that they came out with.
yeah, yeah. It'd really suck if they were to do something like that. Uh,
Yeah. So too long, didn't listen. It's $5. It's great for what it is.
and while you're at it, you might as well just buy Swansong 2, which is a good game, and we'll tell you why it's a good game in a later episode.
Yeah, once I stop getting filtered by MM, I will push through.
I don't know what you're talking about. I like all of MM's chapters except for that one where you have to go visit so and so.
What about the puzzle? Did you get that fucking thing with the puzzle where it wouldn't lock in place?
No, my problem is I was just a brainlet for the first one and I couldn't figure it out, and then the rest of them I finished in like 2 minutes flat. So I'm like, oh, that's the basic principle.
I
Okay,
had one of
done.
them. I had one of them, but the auto lock didn't lock it in place. It was like a little bit askewed. So I'm like, okay, it's wrong. And then I spent like 20 minutes trying to do something else, and then they're like, let me try it again. But if I put it in this way, maybe it'll lock in the right place, and then it worked. Anyway, we'll talk about Swansong some other time. And
Yes.
I guess that's enough for Boston by Night and this episode.
Thank you for listening in. I hope you all stay hungry, and if you are hungry, remember, just get yourself one of them jelly donuts. There's a guy who works in the bottom of this apartment building. He can hook you up